Corla. Minister, you were no doubt very impressed at the speed and efficiency of Justice Charleton in commencing the Disclosures Tribunal proceedings earlier this week. You were probably hoping that it would mean you could put the Garda controversies behind you, but sadly that's not the case because, of course, the disclosures by Garda whistleblowers are only one aspect of serious questions regarding Garda Síochána. You are aware of 5 other pending statutory inquiries into Garda negligence and malpractice. The tragic death of Shane Toohey in 2002 after a night out, a flawed Garda investigation, the family itself being targeted. 23-year-old banqueting manager in Bunratty Castle, Patrick Nugent, dying horrifically after a function with off-duty Gardaí in attendance. An inquest on internal Garda inquiries leading to more questions. 24-year-old John Kelly from Tala died screaming in the Docklands for 30 minutes while the Gardaí stood by. 80-year-old James Clancy killed and dragged by a truck, documents missing, the driver never found. And in all of these cases, the Taoiseach has refused to engage with Kevin Winters, the legal counsel for those people, seeking information on the terms of reference of those inquiries and making sure they are compliant with Article 2 of the Convention on Human Rights. Now, meanwhile, of course, the Minister has engaged with the Policing Authority. First thing on that is that this is not an alternative to excluding the victims from this process. But more importantly, why has the Policing Authority, who have their own power to demand the convening of such inquiries, not done so? And the reason is, despite all of your bleatings about dealing with reform and Garda oversight, these issues have not been addressed. And unless you deal with who's guarding the guards, these problems will continue. Minister, we have a Policing Authority which was handpicked by government, structured in a manner to ensure it's subservient to government. Its first test, the appointment of the new Assistant Commissioners. 31 people applied on the date here that we signed off on the terms of reference into allegations of conduct into the Commissioner. And what do we find out? But that very same Commissioner nominates herself to be on the selection board for those Assistant Commissioners. And nobody on the Policing Authority or in government has any problem with that. Now, when we tried to get information about that, we eventually did. We got that confirmed. Then it was changed. And suddenly, no, she's not doing it now. She's a bit busy. That changed between Monday and Tuesday of this week. But she has appointed her loyal sidekick, Donal O'Coolan, an individual who's involved in a number of these cases. Minister, is this an absolute joke? How in God's name can the Commissioner continue to influence vital decisions regarding the future of Garda Síochána when she is under serious investigation? And what's the point of a Policing Authority that can and will do nothing to exercise its independence? My questions are very brief, Minister. Will you ensure that the Minister for Justice will immediately engage with the legal counsel of the people in the statutory inquiries? Will you accept that the position of the Garda Commissioner is completely untenable and she should be asked to step down? And will you immediately move to bring in the legislative reform necessary for proper democratic oversight and accountability of Garda Síochána?
Minister. Well, thank Clare Daly for her question. First of all, I think we have an inquiry in place, and it is looking at the most serious issues involving Garda management. And I'm not going to comment on the validity or otherwise of the allegations being made. The Justice has been very clear that this inquiry is not about taking sides; it's about getting to the truth. And I think clearly the Justice will, at the completion of his work, make recommendations about how what is drawn from his work on these specific disclosures. And I think that is as it should be, and let the cards fall where they may when that work is done. I think it's important that in the last number of years we have been moving in this House, and it covers all parties, I believe, to turn over stones that were left unturned in this country for many years. In the Garda area we do have much stronger GSOC now. We have whistleblowers legislation. We have a police authority that is independent. And this is turning over stones, and it is right, as Deputy Daly says, there are allegations emerging that no one could be happy with, but those are being investigated by, in one case, a tribunal, by in other cases by a much strengthened Garda Service Ombudsman Commission. There is now whistleblowers' protection to be used and to give people the protection to come forward with their concerns. But I can't stand here as judge and jury in the case of these allegations. They have to be proceeded under the powers that lie there, either by Justice Charleton in the Tribunal with his issues, or by the GSOC with the issues that have been raised there. It's not for politicians to make those decisions. I think the Policing Authority has been very clear. It has said it will monitor the conduct of the Tribunal in terms of the capacity of the Commissioner to continue to do her job, but it is also very clear that the Commissioner has not been found guilty of anything. She strenuously denies the allegations that are before the Tribunal, and she will have an opportunity in the Tribunal to deal with those. In terms of the specific legislative changes in the future, obviously we have to see what emerges from these various investigations, but the government will act as it has in the past to introduce changes should they be found to be necessary. I can't answer the question you raised about legal counsel because I'm not briefed on the specific issues in relation to the request made to the Minister of Justice, or even whether the Minister of Justice is the appropriate person from whom information would occur in those cases. So I'll have to find alternative response to you for that specific question.
That response on the specific, but regards your general points, your utterances of reform and accountability, Minister, are belied by the experience on the ground. We do not have proper oversight. That's not just me saying this. Justice Mary Ellen Ring, the chairperson of GSOC, has demanded increased legislative power supported by the Justice Committee precisely because we don't have it. We do not have an independent policing authority. A policing authority which sits still in the midst of the biggest crisis surrounding policing in our state and has no problem with the Garda Commissioner sitting on a selection board that will dictate the culture of the force and senior appointments going into the future is a big problem. The fact that we don't have these bodies is precisely why we have 6 inquiries going on, and we're going to have 6 more and 6 more again unless you address the fundamental. And that fundamental, you could have addressed it 4 years ago when Deputy Wallace brought in legislation for a proper oversight, independent policing authority. What we recommended then was an independent board, greater scope at appointing the Commissioner, Deputy Commissioners, Assistant Commissioners, power to remove, and a real role that would deliver proper, genuine accountability. You can keep running away. This legislation is long overdue. When are we going to see it?
Well, I think, to be fair, there has been a huge amount of legislation in this area, and no doubt partly in response to issues that have been raised both by the deputies and by others. And there is change occurring. We didn't have a policing authority, an independent policing authority before. You can already see the effectiveness of that, where Gardaí are publicly held to account for their work. We have a much stronger GSOC legislation, and if there's need to reinforce that, that will be done. We have whistleblowers' protection so that people can come forward with their issues, and that legislation is very strongly designed to make sure that those cases are taken seriously and that they are independently handled, and that the person's privacy is protected, and that is occurring. So this is a journey of reform, and I don't pretend that that journey is finished. I mean, we are continuing to evolve, and I'm sure the tribunals will have recommendations for the future. And I think this House will have to listen to those recommendations that come forward and make a collective decision here as to what changes should occur. And that's the role of this House. But I think we have to allow the Tribunal do its work to identify the sources of problems if they exist, and then come back to the House, as we have asked that they would come back within 9 months, so that we do see what action needs to be taken on foot of these allegations that are undoubtedly hugely serious.